Welcome back to Yehoshua's Daf Yomi Shiur, where the Daf continues daily until the complete revelation of Mashiach ben David, that is Messiah, the son of David. Today we're looking at Tractate Chullin, page 76b. By the way, 76 is the numerical value of the word Mashiach. If you spell it M-O-S-H-I-A-C-H, Moshiach. Like some people spell it M-A, some people spell it M-O. So if you spell it M-O-S-H-I-A-C-H, then it equals 76. And that's what Daf we're on today. Chullin 76. Top of the page. With the words Mar bar Rav Ashi Amar Kevan de Zigi Afal Gav de Loi Chivore. Mar Rav Ashi says once the sinews begin to be translucent, even if they are not actually white, they are considered part of the conversions of sinews. Amar Rabbeinu Mishmei Rav Zvi Telasachud Dechado Chad Dilematu Treit Katine. Yipsi kinevaz azavdo binyan. Yipsi katine. Azur binyan. Mal bravashi. Masin lekulo. Yipsi kalimo. Haika roiv minyan. Yipsi katine. Haika roiv binyan. With regard to the removal of the conversions of sinews in the thigh, which renders the animal treifa, Maimar says the name of Rav Zvid, there are three strands, meaning sinews. One is thick and the other two are thin. If the thick sinew was severed, a majority of the structure of the convergence of sinews is gone. As the thick sinew is thicker than the other two combined. If the thin ones were severed, then a majority of the number of sinews is gone. If either type of majority has been severed, the animal is rendered a treifa. Conversely, Mar Rav Ashi teaches a lenient version of this ruling. If the thick sinew was severed, since there is a majority of the number of sinews that remains, the animal is not a treifa. Likewise, if the thin ones were severed, since there is a majority of the structure that remains intact, the animal is not a treifa. Be'oifos shitzar chutehavu. Yipsi chad minayu treifa. Amar bar Ravashi havu kame davaya. Yasu lekame be'oipo udak ishkach bei chamesar hamechad dehavu shnei mechavre nipse ve'ashkach trei. The Gemara comments, all this applies to animals, whereas with regard to birds, there are 16 strands. If even one of them is severed, it is a treifa. Mar Rav Ashi said, I was standing before a father, meaning Rav Ashi. They brought before him a bird. He examined it to see if it was a treifa, and he found 15 sinews. There was one of them that was different than the others. He broke it apart, and it was found to be composed of 2 sinews. Okay? Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Tzomes Hagidin Shamru Berubo, Mai Rubo Rovechod Mehem, Ki Amrite Kamedi Shmuel, Amar Li Mechdi, Tlasahavu, Ki Mifsik Chad Minaihu Legamri Ha'ikatre. The Gemara returns to the issue of the convergence of sinews in an animal. Rabbi Yehuda says that Rav says the convergence of sinews in the thigh, of which the sages spoke, stating that if it is severed, the animal is a treifa, is referring to the severing of the majority of it. Rabbi Yehuda added, what is the meaning of the majority of it? This means the majority of one of the sinews. Rabbi Yehuda further stated, when I stated this halacha in the name of Rav before Shmuel, he said to me, since there are 3 sinews, when one of them is severed entirely, there are still 2 remaining, which means that the majority of the convergence of sinews is intact. Therefore, the animal is still kosher. Time adika trei, haleka trei, lo upliga de Rabanai. Damar Rabanai. Amar Shmuel, Tzomas Agidin, Afilu Nishtal Ba, Elkechuta Sarbal, Keshera. The Gemara refers from Shmuel's statement, the reason the animal is not a treifa is only that there are two remaining, from which it may be inferred that if there are not two remaining, it is not kosher, despite the fact that the other sinew is intact. The Gemara notes, and according to this version of his opinion, Shmuel disagrees with the opinion of Rabbanai, who also stated his ruling in Shmuel's name. As Rabbanai says that Shmuel says with regard to the convergence of sinews in the thigh, even if only one sinew remains of it, which is as thick as the string used to close the neckline of a cloak, the animal is kosher. V'ika the amri mai rubo, rov kol echad ve'echad, ki amri tekame de Shmuel amrali, mechti tilasa havu ha'ika, tilasa dechol echad ve'echad misayele v'Rabbanai. T'amar Rabbanai amar Shmuel tzomet hagidin she'amru, afilu lo nishtar ba, ela kechut hasarbal k'sheira. Some say that there is a different version of this discussion. Yehoshua said, what is the meaning of the majority of it? This means majority of each and every one of the sinews. Yehoshua added, when I stated this halacha in the name of Rav before Shmuel, he said to me, since they are three sinews, there is 1/3 of each and every one, and that should be sufficient. There is no need for a majority of each sinew to remain. The Gemara notes Yehuda's statement in the name of Shmuel supports the opinion of Rabbanai, as Rabbanai says that Shmuel says with regard to the convergence of sinews in the thigh, of which the sages spoke, even if there remains of each of the three sinews only as much as the thickness of the string used to close the neckline of a cloak, the animal is kosher. This also indicates that there is no need for a majority of the sinew to remain. The Mishnah states, if the bone of a limb was broken, but the limb was not completely severed, and the animal was then slaughtered, if the majority of the flesh surrounding the bone is intact, the slaughter of the animal renders it permitted, but if not, its slaughter does not render it permitted. Amar Rav lemala min ha'arkuba im rov habasar kayam. זה וזה מותר, ואם לאו, זה וזה אסור. למטה מן ההרכובה, אם רוב הבשר קיים, זה וזה מותר, אם לאו, עבר אסור, ובהמה מותרת. Rav says, if the bone was broken above the leg joint and then the animal was slaughtered, if the majority of the flesh around the break is intact, both this, the animal itself, and that, the limb, are permitted. The break does not render the animal a treifa, and the limb is not regarded as a hanging limb. Therefore, it is permitted by the slaughter of the animal, but if not, meaning if the majority of the flesh around the break is not intact, both this and that, the animal and the limb, are prohibited. If the bone was broken below the leg joint, then, if a majority of the flesh is intact, both this and that are permitted. If not, then the limb itself is prohibited from the area of the break and below, as it is not permitted by the slaughter of the animal, but the rest of the animal is permitted. Ushmuel amar, bein lemala ubein lemata, im rov habasar kayam, ze v'ze mutar, im lav, aver asur u'abhema muteres. And Shmuel says, whether the break is above or below the leg joint, the halacha is the same. If a majority of the flesh is intact, both this and that, the limb and the animal, are permitted. If the majority of the flesh is not intact, the limb is prohibited and the animal is permitted, even if the leg was broken. Above the leg joint, the animal does not become a treifa unless the leg was entirely severed. Maskivra Rav Nachman l'Shmuel yomeru eiver ממנה מוטל בהשפעה ומותרס. אמר לרב אחא בר רב הונא רב נחמן לרב נמי יאמרו עבר ממנה מוטל בהשפעה ומותרס. Rav Nachman objects to this ruling of Shmuel. If one permits the animal despite the fact that its leg is prohibited, people will say a limb from the animal is placed in the garbage and it is prohibited, and yet the animal itself is permitted, they may then mistakenly conclude that even if that leg had been completely severed from the animal would be permitted. Rav Acha bar Rav Huna said to Rav Nachman, this concern also exists according to the opinion of Rav in a case where the bone is broken below the joint and the flesh is not intact. Rav rules in that case that the animal is permitted and the limb is prohibited. But is there not the concern that people will say a limb from this animal is placed in the garbage and the animal itself is permitted? Amar le hachi ka'amina ever shechaya mimena mutar v'ashma muteres. Rav Nachman said to him, this is what I meant to say. People will say a limb from which this animal lives, meaning which if removed renders the animal a treifa, is placed in the garbage, and the animal itself is permitted. The concern exists only according to the opinion of Shmuel, who permits the animal even when the break is above the joint, as were it severed there, the animal would thereby be rendered a treifa. People may mistakenly equate the case where the bone was broken and the case where it was severed and permit both. The concern does not exist according to the opinion of Rav, as he permits the animal only in a case where the bone is broken below the joint, and even if it were severed there, that would not render it a treifa. Shalachamu mitam hilchos kavasei derav hador shalachu kavasei deshmuel hador shalachu kavasei derav ever asmu mitam imasa. With regard to this dispute, they sent a ruling from there, meaning Eretz Yisrael. The halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rav, that if the bone was broken above the leg joint, if the majority of the flesh around the break is not intact, both the animal and the limb are prohibited. They then sent a ruling. The halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Shmuel, that only the limb is prohibited. They then sent a ruling. The halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rav, that the animal is a treifa, and they added that the limb itself is not rendered pure by the slaughter. Rather, it imparts the impurity of a limb from a living animal by carrying. The animal itself, though, is rendered pure from the impurity of a carcass and is prohibited only as a treifa. Masiv Rav Chizda lo im taharao shchitas treifa oisa ves ha'ever hamedulal ba davar shigufa taher esaruba davar she'eno yufa. Rav Chizda raises an objection from a brayta cited earlier, 73a, concerning whether the slaughter of a mother animal can render pure a limb of its fetus that was extended outside the womb, even though the act of slaughter cannot render the fetus permitted for consumption. The rabbis brought proof for their opinion that this limb is rendered pure from the halacha that a treifa is rendered pure by slaughter, even though it is not thereby permitted for consumption. Rabbi Meir responded, no, even if the slaughter of a treifa renders the animal itself pure, and likewise the slaughter of any animal renders pure the limb that was partially cut from it, but still hangs from it, from the imparting the impurity of a carcass, despite the fact that this animal or limb is prohibited for consumption. That is, so with regard to something that is part of its own body, does it necessarily follow that it should also render pure the limb of its fetus, which is something that is not part of its own body? It is explicit in Rabbi Meir's claim that the hanging limb of a treifa is rendered pure by the slaughter of the animal. Amar le Rabo. It's a long daf. Okay, Amar le Rabo. Hadore a pirche lamalach, o esvei, o isev, mimasnisa nishkata behema huchshur v'dameha. Tivrei Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon Omer, lo huchshur. Rabbi said to Rav Chizda, why are you searching after refutations from Braitot that are not known by all? You can raise a conclusive refutation from the Mishnah 127b with regard to the limb or flesh of an animal that was partially severed but remains hanging from it. If the animal was slaughtered, the limb of the flesh were thereby rendered susceptible to contracting the impurity of food by the blood of an animal, as blood is one of the 7 liquids that render foods susceptible to impurity. This is a statement of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Shimon says they were not rendered susceptible with the blood of the slaughtered animal It is evident that, according to all opinions in the Mishnah, the hanging limb and flesh are not regarded as a limb or flesh from a living animal, which would not need be rendered susceptible to impurity, as they impart their own impurity. Amar le masnisin ika lidachoy kedachinan. Rav Chizda said to Rabbah, the difficulty from the Mishnah can be refuted, as we refuted it earlier in 73a by claiming that the dispute about the blood rendering the animal susceptible to impurity concerns only the hanging flesh, but that the hanging limb from an animal that was slaughtered does have the status of a limb for a living animal and the associated impurity. Manu Shmuel. Hadar Bey Shmuel. The Gemara relates that when Rozer ascended to Eretz Yisrael, he found Rav Yirmiyah sitting and saying this halach of Rav, meaning that if the bone is broken above the leg joint and the flesh is not intact, the animal is a treifa. Rabbi Zera said to him, "You have spoken well," and Arioch interpreted the matter likewise in Babylonia. The Gemara asks, who is Arioch? It is Shmuel. But that is difficult, as Shmuel disagreed with Rav concerning this issue. The Gemara explains Shmuel retracted his opinion in favor of that of Rav. Tana Rabbanan Yishbara Etzim Yazan Achut Im O Ubasar Choifin Eschul Boi Mutar Im Lav Asur V'chamaru Boi Ki Asar Dim Yom Riyochan Rov of Yom Amri La Rov Hekefo Amrav Papa Hilkach Be'inan Rov of Yom Be'inan Rov Hekefo. The sages taught in Praita, in the case where the bone broke and protruded outward, its skin and flesh cover a majority of the bone, the animal is permitted. If not, is prohibited. The Gemara asks, and how much is the majority of the bone? Rav Dini, when Rav Dini came from Eretz Yisrael to Babylonia, he said that Rabbi Yochanan says a majority of its width, and some say that he said a majority of its circumference. Rav Papa said, therefore, as there is no clear ruling on the matter, we require that the bone be covered by a majority of its width, and we also require that it be covered by a majority of its circumference. Amar Ula, Amar Yochanan, all hare hu kebaso, Amar le Rav Nachman Ula, le memal, all yitzach nebaso ha, all baso kutani, Amar le anan, all oi baso taninan. Ula said, or Yochanan said, skin is like flesh with regard to this issue, meaning, if the flesh has been removed, the skin covers a majority of the bone, the animal is kosher. Rav Nachman said to Ula, and let the master say that skin combines with flesh, meaning that if flesh and skin together cover a majority of the bone, the animal is kosher, as the time of the above writes. It teaches skin and flesh, which indicates that skin alone is ineffective. Ula said to him, we learned that the Brisa states skin or flesh. Ikid Amri, in brackets it says Amar Ula, Amar Rav Yochanan, or Mistaref Lebasar, Amar Rav Nachman Ula, Leimamar or Mashlim Lebasar Leichumra. Some say that there's a different version of this discussion. Ula said that Rav Yochanan said skin combines with flesh. Rav Nachman said to Ula, and let the master say that skin completes the amount of flesh required, and this is a stringent ruling. This would mean that if the majority of the bone is covered mostly with flesh and the rest of the majority is covered with skin, the animal is kosher. But if the majority is covered half with flesh and half with skin, it is not kosher. Amar le, ana uvda yidana, dehu bar gozala, dehabibei, Rabbi Yitzchak, de'o, mitzaref, lebasor havios, dekam de bioichin v'achshrei. Amar le, bar gozala kamad, bar gozala darchik shani. Ula said to him, I know my ruling for the following incident, as it was a certain fledgling that was in the house of Rabbi Yitzchak, and his leg broke, and it was a situation where the skin combined with flesh to cover the majority of the bone. And Rabbi Yitzchak came before Rabbi Yochanan, and he deemed the bird kosher. And Rabbi Nachman said to him, do you speak of a fledgling? The halacha in the case of a fledgling is different, as its skin is soft, and is considered like flesh. Chanu yidin rakin da'asu l'kamei d'rabba. Amar Rabba l'maylechush lehu chada demar Yochanan gidin shesofon nekashos. The Gemara further relates there was a case involving certain soft sinews that combined with flesh to cover the majority of a broken bone. And they came before Rabbah for a ruling. Rabbah said, what concern is there with sinews in this case? First, there is no concern, because Rabbi Yochanan says, with regard to sinews that will ultimately harden,